if you find it. I've been too much on your plate. I'll keep hiding, calling out your name, calling out your name, calling out your name, calling out your name, calling out your name.
The classic Saab 900 is quickly becoming one of the most appreciated cars of its era for its quirkiness, uniqueness, rarity, and among a few other things. Today we're in my classic Saab 900 Turbo. We're going to be taking it for a drive and discovering what makes it so great. The classic Saab 900 initially debuted in the late 1970s. This particular model here is a 1988 900 Turbo. Over the years, Saab did do a few revisions, both cosmetic and mechanical, to these cars, and it ultimately ended production in the early 1990s. Many of the later model 900s, such as this one, were powered by a 16-valve 2-liter turbocharged engine. Turbo was obviously an option. If you got a naturally aspirated variant, you were looking at a 2.1 liter. Earlier cars in the United States came with a single overhead cam, either naturally aspirated or turbocharged engine as well, producing less power and torque. This particular example, and the example you want, is paired to a 5-speed manual transmission. All 900s were offered with the option of a 3-speed automatic. That is, of course, for the SPG, which is kind of the, at least, top of the line main production 900. There were some you know, limited run cars like commemorative editions, Airflows, Carlsons, things like that, but the SPG is really kind of the top of the line mainstream 900 that was built. Now my car is kind of an FPG, as my buddy affectionately calls it, meaning it does have the SPG body kit on it. It has the SPG 3-spoke wheels, which did come as an option on the turbocharged cars. And so it kind of looks the part of an SPG while not ultimately being an SPG. Let's get back to this powertrain real quick. Typical 80s turbo lag. The 2-liter dual overhead cam turbo version, similar to what's in this car, were rated to produce around 160 horsepower from the factory. Some came with upwards of 180, 190, I believe, with what's called the red box option. For what it is, it's really not bad. You do have some 80s turbo lag in there, although it's not crazy because it is a fairly small turbo and you're not making a ton of boost with it. It just gives you enough power to make the car fun to drive. In the intro I mentioned this car, it's kind of being appreciated for its uniqueness and its sort of quirkiness, and a big part of that is its styling. I mean, how many 3-door big practical hatchbacks do you see, especially shaped like this? Because it is technically a hatchback. That is how the rear trunk opens, but it doesn't have the true hatchback wagon shape to it. The 900 was also offered in a wide variety of other body trims. There was a convertible that was introduced in the mid-80s. There was a 5-door as well. There was what was called a notchback, which has a slightly different back end, also in the 3 and 5-door. But in my opinion, the one you want is the 3-door hatchback like this one. It's just so unique, and I challenge you to name a more practical 3-door car out there, because you put these rear seats down and you can sleep back there. I plan on taking this car camping soon, and well, it should be a great time. I think the 3 spokes that this car came as an option with from factory is just brings the whole car together even more. It makes it feel super 80s. They're just, it's such a classic design. The classic 900s are also just quirky cars, generally speaking, which is kind of par for the course for Saab. We just talked about the shape of it and how that's kind of unique, but there's also a lot of features, especially when we talk about the interior and how things function in here, that are also kind of goofy. Obviously, of course, first off, classic Saab, we have the key down here in the center as opposed to on the steering column up here. In the manual cars such as this one, you also need to make sure the transmission is in reverse before you take the key out. There is a reverse lockout in these cars. The gauge cluster is so simple and so well laid out, but it does have a couple of goofy quirks. For one, the tachometer. It has this econ range in it, which is essentially between about 1200 and 3500 RPM. It's kind of like the opposite of redline. It's like, if you want to get your maximum efficiency, stay in this range, which kind of goes without saying and is common sense, but the fact they added it in there is kind of funny. Then you have the turbo gauge, which is directly hooked up via a vacuum line, so it's very accurate. It's fun to just watch that kind of swing around as you get in the boost and push the car. By far the quirkiest thing about this car though is the setup under the hood. Not only is the transmission mounted under the engine is then tilted at a 45-degree angle, and the belts are all on the, what is the front side of the engine, but the front side of the engine is on the back side, because the output side where the transmission connects to it is on the front by the headlights. Power is then directed around through a set of chains and gears back to the transmission underneath and sent back to power the front wheels. Very goofy. That's why when you see it under the hood, it is a front wheel drive car, but the engine is oriented in a way that makes it appear like it's a rear wheel drive car. Very goofy. And I'm sure they had a great reason for it, but there might be a reason why they were the only car company that did something like that. And really, as I drive this thing around, people just love it. I mean, every time I drive this thing, I park it somewhere, I get a compliment, I get a look, I get a wave, and this thing is honestly kind of a polished turd. The paint is rough in some areas, it has a little bit of body damage on it still, but people don't care. They just still think it's a cool, unique car, and that's part of the reason why I love driving it, is seeing other people appreciate its coolness. And the exhaust note on this car, I'll just chime in real quick. Modern day 4-cylinders, as many people know, just do not sound good. So I don't know what's changed over the years, but this thing has a proper good sound to it. Jumping back into the interior, there are some other kind of quirks about this as well. The windshield, for one, you get used to it eventually, but it's very upright, and it also wraps around pretty far. Obviously, most cars, the windshield's just kind of flat and goes across the front, but here it's more upright and it almost curves around, kind of in the same way that a Koenigsegg windshield goes, although at a much steeper angle. What that means is you get some fantastic visibility. The A-pillars are incredibly thin, part of the reason being there's no airbags in this car. B-pillars also very small. C-pillars are about average sized, but there's just windows everywhere on this interior, so visibility is fantastic. It's got the big analog buttons that you press, have a good tactile feedback to them. The switches are all controlled by rods for the AC. It feels very analog, and there's no modern tech within this thing. It has the old school equalizer too. I mean, it feels very 80s, and that's part of what makes me love it. And that's not to say it's unique from other cars. I'm sure other 80s cars also have these same attributes, but it's just one of the little things I've learned to really appreciate about this thing. While I'm pulled over here for a second, let's talk about space. So I mentioned just how big and practical this car is. The back seats, you have a decent amount of room. Adults can sit back there. I have had friends back here before. It's not going to be as comfy as a full-fledged sedan or 5-door, but it isn't bad. As far as front space, I do wish there was a bit more room. I'm 6'1", my headliner up here is sagging just a little bit, but my hair kind of rubs against it sometimes. I also have the seat the whole way back, and it fits me pretty well, but I feel like if you're over 6'1" or have extremely long legs, it might feel a little bit cramped up here for you. I would like to take a second away from today's video to talk about the sponsor, which is SyncWire. So if you have an 80s car like me, 90s car, something that doesn't have modern Bluetooth or capabilities, you've probably heard of these FM transmitters before. I've actually been considering getting one of these for this car for a long time, and SyncWire was kind enough to send some out for me to try out. I've been using it for a couple weeks now. It's fantastic. There are two main things that I like about this particular FM transmitter above the other ones I've used in the past. First off is it's very inconspicuous. It's small small, it's compact, it sticks in here very well. It's almost the same size as the buttons that are right along this row, so really it almost looks like it's supposed to be there. It also has 2 different charging ports, so if you do need to charge your phone, there's an excellent solution for it right there. But I will be doing a giveaway of 2 of these on my Instagram. So what you need to do if you're watching this video, go check out my post on Instagram that I made about this going live at the same time as the video. You need to comment on that post, like it, and make sure you're following me. I have 2 of these to give away, and I will be announcing the winners, well, shortly after this video goes live. So go check it out, and thank you to Synkwire for sponsoring this video. One last major item I think we need to touch on in this video is the rarity and value of these cars. So I was quite shocked when I looked up how many 900s were produced during Saab's run. The car was manufactured for, we'll say, about 15 years, and in that 15 years, they produced 900,000 900. So back in the day, I'm sure these were fairly common cars. Nowadays, you almost never see them because they're 30 plus, 40 years old, and over time they get crashed, totaled, owners give up on them, etc. Same with any other old car, so they are becoming quite rare. It's really hard to gauge the 900 market right now. During COVID, it skyrocketed, same with everything else. But there have been countless news sources that have just raved about the 900 and how it's becoming one of these 80s icons. The values on these are going up, and they're probably not going to be coming down. They're probably just going to continue to raise. The most desirable 900s that you'll see out there, outside of like the Carlsons and the Airflows, which are 1 out of 10,000 cars, if that, are either the SPGs or the 5-speed manual turbo cars. That's not to say the automatics or the NA cars can't command a big price, but those, the turbos and the SPGs, are generally the most sought after specs. So you can find beat, rusted turbos for $500,000 still if you're looking in the right places. But when you come for a clean example that's been gone through and you can just enjoy on weekends, you're looking at anywhere between 10 and I mean even upwards of $25,000, $30,000. There have been some SPGs that have sold in the 40 to 50 range, but that's not really a good barometer for what the average SPG will sell for. I would say average condition 900 turbo, average condition SPG is probably commanding anywhere between $5,000 to $15,000. But that is a glimpse into what makes the Saab 900 so great, why I love it so much, and why I think it truly deserves all the praise that it has been getting. If you'd like to see more content on Saabs, particularly in 900s, feel free to check out my channel. If you're also a 900 fan and want to pick up some merch to show your support for the 900 and the Saab brand, as well as maybe my channel, check out the link in the description to pick up some cool merch. Once again, thank you to Synkwire for sponsoring this video. Their FM transmitter, if you don't win the giveaway and are interested, is in the description as well. Thank you all so much for watching. Consider subscribing if you enjoy these sorts of videos, and I'll see y'all in the next one.